All right, so why don't we begin? I want to say good afternoon to everybody, and I'm Susan Bazarski, the Executive Director of Lupus LA, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to today's panel discussion titled Spotlight Strength, Women of Hollywood on Thriving Lupus. Today, we gather to celebrate resilience, empowerment, and authenticity in exploring the unique challenges faced by women in Hollywood who are navigating incredible careers alongside autoimmune diseases like lupus. We recognize that there aren't many conversations happening about how to support career-driven women who also have chronic illnesses. So we wanted to open up this conversation with some of our amazing board members who navigate living with lupus while finding success in one of the most notoriously rigorous industries, entertainment, in the epicenter of Hollywood, which is in our backyard. So I'm thrilled to introduce you to our panelists today. We have Lauren Schiller-Donner, a renowned and prolific film, TV, and theater producer, boasting an impressive array of credits, including the X-Men and Deadpool franchises, Pretty in Pink, Free Willy, and You've Got Mail. We have Marissa Tancheron-Whedon, our co-chair, who is the co-creator, showrunner, and executive producer of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She also co-created and appeared in the Emmy Award-winning musical Dr. Horrible's Sing-Along blog. Other TV credits include Spartacus and Dollhouse. We have Cara Delaverson, Executive Vice President of Drama Series at NBC, Peacock, USA, and Sci-Fi. And Amanda Paley, our Senior VP of Current Programs at CBS. Thank you, ladies, all for joining us.
Yay, all of you.
Thank you, guys. All impressive women. Let's get started. Okay, so these questions are going to be for everybody. Lauren, we can start with you and then sort of have a conversation and everybody can feel free to chime in. Can you ladies share how you manage the demands of your high-profile roles with the need for personal health care and self-management? Lauren, why don't we start with you?
Okay. I'll basically say you figure it out as you go along. My lupus came on a while ago because I'm older than all these women. And I didn't really know what it was. And basically, I mean, I can tell you the whole story, but basically you put one foot in front of the other and you move forward. Remembering that everybody has something and you deal with it in the best way that you can. In my particular situation, I had had kidney problems as a child at the ages 9 to 12. So they kept, when I had fevers and paralyzed and all the effects of lupus for me, they kept testing the wrong testing. They kept testing my kidneys and they re-implanted my ureters in my bladder and they busted stones that never bothered me. And it wasn't until, strangely enough, I went to a Sikh doctor that he took my blood count. He saw it had high ANA and sent me over to our wonderful Dr. Wallace. My advice would be, if you're not sure that you have it, lupus, get 2 opinions. Or if you're not happy with your doctor, go seek another doctor. I would also advise, looking back at my life now, I would advise my young self to just be gentle on myself, be gentle on yourself. You know, it's not your fault that you have this. Everybody's going to say, why me? But move on from that, because really being negative or being sad or being angry doesn't help you at all. You know, it just wastes your energy. You need your energy in order to exist. Take deep breaths. Meditation is fantastic. TM to me is the easiest one, but be gentle on yourself. And on the other hand, what I did was I just pushed myself. I just ran myself through, and it had a toll. It took a toll on my first marriage, which was shaky anyway. It wasn't a marriage meant to be, and it certainly blew it up. It just move forward. You're going to be fine. You're going to eventually be fine. And you can do, if I could do what I did with lupus, And I would come home and I would sit in the garage. I was so exhausted, I couldn't even open the car door to get out of the car. I was so wiped. When my first husband was not supportive, I had family and friends to turn to, and I advise you to do that too. Fortunately, I then married a wonderful man who was there for me every step of the way. Lean on your dogs, your cats, your friends, your neighbors, anybody who loves you. Take that in and let that in, because that will help too.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Lauren. Marissa, you want to weigh in?
Sure. I second everything that Lauren just said, but I've been working in this business since I was 5 years old. So I sort of didn't know any other mode of being other than pushing and keeping it going. And clearly all of us understand that way of living and that sort of work ethic, which is why all of us have had the successes that we have had despite having the challenge of lupus. But as Lauren said, if I could say to my younger self, I was officially diagnosed at 15, but of course symptoms were happening, preceding that. I would say to my younger self, your health must come first. It doesn't matter what people think at the office. It doesn't matter that you can't do this appearance or this show. If you're not feeling good and your health is spiraling, then nothing else matters. Um, and of course, as the years went by and flares started to get more severe, I had the great fortune in the partner that I found, my life partner, who happens to also be my work partner. When I was working alone, same thing as Lauren, I would come home, pull into the driveway and cry because I just felt like, how can I do this again tomorrow? Um, and so, oh, another thing, sorry, I'm all over the place because this is a really big question. I wouldn't share with people. I wouldn't be forthcoming about what I was dealing with because I was afraid. I was afraid that it would jeopardize my job. But over time, I realized that no, this is a part of who I am. And if I'm going to be successful in any aspect of work or life, I have to be truthful. And more of that being truthful to other people is more about being truthful to myself and not trying to live in denial, or like the more you pretend, the more that's like feeding into the denial of what you have and what you have to deal with on a daily basis. Um, but yes, until Jed came into my life, I didn't have someone to immediately fall into, and he's just remarkable. When I can't do it, he does the heavy lifting, and then sometimes it has to be the other way around. So I'm just very grateful to have found a partner in him in all aspects of life. Yeah.
Beautiful. Amanda?
Yeah, it's wild. I feel like we all have the same story, but I also think it's endemic a little bit of when we all came up in
Mhm.
Hollywood. I will say a big thing that, like, shout out to Gen Z. I think this next generation is so much better at holding boundaries and at saying, I can't do that. I'm exhausted. It took me, honestly, I'm still working on it,
Yeah.
to be able to raise my hand and just say, you know what, I'm not feeling great and I can't do this, and not feel like that was a real sign of weakness. I started as a Hollywood assistant, 20 years ago, and it was like, if you don't come in on Saturday, you better not come in on Sunday. And so
Right.
the idea of noping out on something because of your health was like, well, no, you would be fired and someone else would be in your seat. And I feel like that's really changed. I feel like now there is more of a focus on physical health, on mental health. There's less of a stigma. And I think for me, it's been so nice to just feel like there's more of a community and you can be more honest and just say, and I think COVID changed a lot. Now it's like,
For
if
sure.
someone's before, I mean, I would go in the office so sick, like whether it's lupus or, you know, the flu, I would go in the office. And now it's like someone has a cough and you're like, ooh, don't come in. I don't want your germs. So I do feel happy that it feels like society has changed for the better in some of these ways, in, you know, allowing everyone, regardless of what they're grappling with, to just be more upfront about what they can and can't handle. And I think it makes all of us better, you know, because if you burn yourself out, you know, that's it.
Yeah,
Right.
100%. Cara?
Well, I would agree with what every lady has already said so far. And I would also say, you know, in a very similar fashion, when I was first starting to work, I was told by people who I think were, you know, trying to give me good advice, don't tell anyone that you have lupus, because I had been diagnosed in college. So I, you know, was in the workforce already, knowing my health challenges. That was the advice. Don't tell your bosses, don't tell your coworkers. That will definitely be seen as a weakness. And I think that a lot of that has changed. And I feel very fortunate that the people I work with now are so supportive of any, you know, health challenges I might have. And instead of it being the work environment that sort of puts the pressure on me, it's me that puts the pressure on me. So like Marissa said, I'm my own worst enemy, probably. Like, they are very, very understanding. So if I said I don't feel well enough to do this, or I need to, you know, pull back on some of the things I'm doing, they would absolutely support that. It's the internal struggle that I still have all this time, you know, later, that I constantly am working on, just to establish those healthy boundaries for myself. Like, when do I stop pushing and say, this is too far, you need a break, you need to take care of yourself, you need to spend as much time on self-care as you are spending on your job. You know, those things I think are just inherently part of the challenge of the diagnosis, because you know better than anyone else, like when you're getting too far, like when you are pushing your physical health to a point of potential flare, or, you know, exacerbating something. So you have to be the one that really speaks up. So I think it's still hard. And like all the ladies, I have wonderful, supportive people who call me out. My my boyfriend Jimmy is probably the first one to say, like, you are doing too much, you're going to make yourself sick. My family, my coworkers. So I think it's, you know, it's great to have people around you who are the mirror, but you also have to prioritize it for yourself. And it's not easy, you know, like Amanda said, I'm still, you know, fighting that battle, but it's a very important one to try to make sure you take care of yourself first.
All such amazing advice and comments. So I, you know, being a female leader is, you know, unique in itself. Thank God, not as unique as it used to be. So I'd like to ask all of you, you're all in positions of power in different ways, and all living with autoimmune diseases. Has your disease influenced your leadership role, in the style and your approach to running your teams?
Mm.
Maybe Marissa, you can start with that.
For sure. Coming up as a younger writer, when I was first starting my writing career, I was in rooms that did not take into account people's, you know, home life or the hours. And of course, my health suffered because of it. But I was still in a place where I was afraid to say that I think I need to go home. So I have always had a heightened awareness of that in when I finally became a showrunner, and I was actually the person defining the hours of being in the writer's room, defining, you know, what our set day would look like. And I think we had a very happy show because of it for a good amount of years. And that's a long time to be on one show. 7 years is a long time, but we tried to be as mindful as we could about people's time and respect their time. and so they could go home themselves and rest. And, they might not have a debilitating disease that they have to be mindful of, but it's still quality of life. And I think that reduces stress, that helps to keep you healthy. And I think that definitely, having lupus influenced my leadership role in that way.
I think it's a very hard balance because, and it depends on what your job and your industry is. If you're filming, you're a crucial element because it's a very collaborative job. And you don't have the luxury of going home. I too didn't admit to my illness for many, many years. And the same applied for the first time I had cancer. I didn't. Second time I did, yes, then at that point. It's very hard in your 20s and 30s when the disease is raging. It's a balance of pushing yourself and your team and understanding that somebody has to go home. But if somebody has to go home, it affects the whole. So it's, in some situations, it is not easy. What you learn later on as you get older, like I am, is that the most important thing in life is your health. That you can have as much success as, more success than anybody in the world, more money than anybody in the world. But if you don't have your health, it means nothing. So you have to sort of choose your times. If you're really ill, you must speak up and go home, and you must, as a leader, listen and realize that you got to help that person out.
Yeah.
It's
Cara?
hard. It's very hard balance. Sorry, Cara.
I'm sure.
And then you add motherhood to the mix.
Oh my.
You're
Oh,
like, wait,
yes, yes. And then the children are
Wow.
the priority. Yes, I know. Yes.
Yeah. Cara, you want to weigh in here?
Sure. I mean, I think luckily I have a really amazing team that I work with, but I think in terms of leadership style, like I sort of the opposite of when I was coming up. I'm very honest about my, health challenges. And I think that has made people feel comfortable, on the team being honest about their particular, either health or family challenges. And I think because we have this sort of respect and trust on the team, people want to be at work when they can fully be at work, and they are very respectful of the other team members, knowing if they have to be out or they have to take time, that someone else will pick up the slack for them. But because, there is that mutual respect, it's sort of a handoff. Like everybody has times where they need, days off, or they need to be going home earlier, taking care of themselves. And I think that if, you communicate and people feel trusted and respected, then they feel like they can take it when they need it, and that they also feel like they will pick up the slack when other people need it. And I think, luckily, since I had the opposite experience coming up, I think me and the co-head of the department were very, very vocal about, like, please go home if you need to go home, take a vacation. We force people to take vacation because, we're busy and they don't want to let anyone down. We're like, you must go on vacation, and we must go on vacation. And when we're on vacation, please do not call me or text me. And likewise, when you go on vacation, I will not call you or text you or email you. I think it's so important. So I do think it really affected my leadership style. I did not feel that way coming up. So I think you have to make it so. If you're in a job where you can do that, it's so important. It's so important for the team to know that you value their mental health and their physical health, more than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did any of you, until I had the luxury of having my own office, I would do car naps in the middle of the
yeah.
day. Yeah.
Or lock my door and
Yeah.
people had a migraine. I mean, I do get migraines, but really just so that I could rest.
Yeah. Yes.
100%.
I used to do that in my old office, and they moved us. Now we all have clear walls. And I'm like,
Wow. You have to go under your desk.
Go back to the car.
Clear walls.
Every office should have nap pods.
They really should.
Yeah.
So it's all fishbowl now.
It's such a fishbowl. Yeah, we had one of those. Yeah.
I hate it. It's rough. But I mean, I feel like again we're all sort of saying the same thing, but I will say as someone who before I was diagnosed, I was getting progressively sicker, but like was just like, well, I'm just tired, I'm just busy, I'm fine. And my old boss would come into my new boss's office. I was an assistant at CAA, and he would come in, he'd be like, you look like shit, go to the doctor.
Really? Oh my God.
And I finally like did because he wouldn't get off me.
Wow.
And that was the beginning of me being diagnosed. So like I try to in a in a kinder way pay that forward with I mean any assistant, any junior executive, it's like, hey, go to the doctor. This will still be here. The notes will still be here tomorrow. You know, I just, but again, it's funny thinking back to when, you know, when I was coming up and just the culture was just so different. It felt much harder to say something like I have a doctor's appointment. You know, it felt like you were gonna be penalized, like you were, you know, you were not prioritizing the right thing when like I mean, truly, I almost died before I was diagnosed with lupus. And like if I were dead, I wouldn't be doing any work. So,
No, it's true. It's so
Yeah.
true. It's so much better now. When
Yeah.
so
for my time, it was
Oh,
Yeah.
I can't imagine. Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I will also
still
maybe
in my
say
head
this-
too. Still, on vacation, you're talking about I mean, I've had to like really work on myself to not do anything during vacation.
oh yeah.
Oh,
But I will
God.
say it's more women in charge.
That's right.
Mhm.
Yes, I have seen that. Yes.
Yeah. It makes a difference. So ladies, we've talked sort of in a general way, and we want to ask more of a like one specific question. So can you each share a moment when lupus challenged your career, like a specific moment where maybe you had to leave work or you couldn't show up, and how you handled it? Something just a little bit more specific for our audience that's tuning in. Lauren, you want to start?
I never not showed up, but in the beginning, when I didn't know what it was, because I was in so much pain and I had a fever, I took Excedrin. Excedrin, I don't think many people take it today, but it has caffeine in it. Takes care of your pain. It gives you a boost. And I took it so much that of course, I ripped up my stomach.
Oh,
And I remember location scouting on my second movie, and it was, you know, I mean, I was young to be doing such a big movie and having to tell him to stop the car while I went on the side of the road and threw up.
Hmm.
And then, of course, they thought I was pregnant, and they were like, "Oh, well, maybe you should go home because you're pregnant." I was like, "No." You know, what I had was I was getting an ulcer. So, but, you know, I don't know if that's good advice, but just be careful. Go get yourself checked out.
yeah.
It is
I mean, I
different.
I
think
didn't lose the job.
we've all made the point that we've learned from those
Right.
moments that you can't
Yeah.
push yourself. It's
Yeah.
just not worth it. It's not worth it. Um, for me, it was a really tough one. We got through our first season, and you know, this was the first time Jed and I were running a show. We got through our first season, and I was pregnant going into our second season, and I had done a lot of work leading up to actually getting pregnant. So I was vegan for 3 years. I would meditate every day. I changed my whole lifestyle enough so that all the doctors were like, "Yeah, I guess you can try." And then it worked clearly. So I had 20 weeks of a very lovely pregnancy, and I was like, I did it. Maybe this changes everything. They always say that your hormonal makeup will shift the lupus either one way or the other. But then my kidney flare that I had had a few years before that, it reared its ugly head again, and it was acute right away. It went right to stage 4 diffuse proliferative nephritis while carrying Benny Sue. So of
Oh.
course there was no I wanted to keep working for some reason because you just feel like, well, no, this is my identity and this is how I'm defining myself. And we just got here and I don't want it to be ruined. And then it's like her life in the balance, my life in the balance. And the stakes were so high, but I think the work was sort of distracting me from those stakes. And I was like, if I let go of that, then I'm going to have to emotionally fully deal with what's happening right now to my daughter, to me. So I got over that real quick and just focused on getting better. So of course I had to step away. But poor Jed had to like, and this all fell on him as well, his shoulders and his emotional state and doing the heavy lifting at work. But he would come to the hospital first. And once my daughter was born, she was in the NICU. I was still on one floor. And so we'd go from visiting both of us and then he'd go to the office and he'd come back at night. So again, the beauty of the partnership I have with him, but that was the biggest time that lupus not only affected, potentially risked both my daughter and my life, but, the work, which is at the bottom of the list at that point, obviously.
Amanda?
Yeah, I mean, to talk about before I was diagnosed, I was getting progressively sicker, and I would get a paper cut and it wouldn't stop bleeding. And I remember crying over that, and my fellow assistant was like, are you okay? And I was like, Brad Pitt needs to get his script. And when I ultimately, went to the doctor and they were like, oh, we think you need, they called and they said, we want to get a second opinion because your results are like very, very odd. My boss had my fellow assistant drive me to the hospital, and we got in his car and I burst into tears and he was like, it's okay, you're going to be fine. And I was like, no, I don't have anything to read. And I made him take me to my house so that I could pack a bunch of scripts days before iPads. He literally was like, if you die because you're getting scripts to bring to the hospital, I am going to be so mad at you. But I brought a bunch of scripts to the hospital, and I think it's related to what Marissa was saying, which is the work is a very good distraction from the disease. And while I have much better work-life balance now, and I'm much more aware of okay, I need to take a break. I need to go to bed early. I need, I can finish this thing in the morning, whatever that is. I do also sometimes like being able to channel myself into, okay, well, I gotta watch this cut. I gotta get these notes out. I gotta do that. And kind of using that. So it's figuring out that balance of what's a healthy amount of sort of work distraction, and then what's psychotic, like crying because I needed to bring scripts to the hospital.
Right.
Yeah.
Cara?
I think one of the times that came to mind when you asked that was earlier on when my lupus was much more active, but like the other ladies, I was sort of pushing through. I was producing on set at the time, so that makes it really hard to go home early, as Lauren said. So I was sort of sucking up how much pain I was in. I was having a lot of stomach pain, and clearly something was wrong, but I was like, I don't have time for that. It's fine. I'll just eat less or drink ginger ale, take, Tums. I was just like, I'll figure it out later. And by the time, I got to the doctor, I had intestinal vasculitis as, a lupus symptom. And I had really not thought it was that serious, but of course, then it was. And I could not eat solid food for a month. I basically survived on Ensure and shakes and soft food because I had totally let my stomach get so far down the road of the inflammation that then I couldn't pull it back easily. So it was it took a long time to recover so I could just eat normally again because I was like, I have time for this. And then, the sort of repercussion of that was the recovery was much longer and much more serious. So now anytime I feel that starting to come on, I'm like, I'm not going down that road again.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
here I come, like, yes.
right.
But you learn the lessons the hard way, as all the ladies have said.
It takes a long time to come to terms with what you have to do, because I do think that, part of it is we get resentful of the fact that we always have to be thinking about our health.
Yeah.
And it's just some days I just feel like this is unfair. I don't, but it is what it is, and it is what we have to do. So one day, if you have a jam-packed day, you kind of have to plan it that the next day you
Yeah.
have a much lighter day, or you do absolutely nothing.
Yes.
So the whole thing is a preventative measure so that you don't find yourself with a stomach bleed or barfing on the side of the road,
Yeah.
or like you
Yes.
almost dying from paper cuts. And one
Yes.
thing is, as all of us were talking, it's just like all of us just have to laugh about it. I think I talked about this at the gala. Just me and Stacy, our co-chair, we talk to each other and then we just start laughing because these are all terrible things happening to us, but it's sort of like you have to just bask in the ridiculousness of it, because otherwise it would be nothing but darkness. So
Also, misery loves company, so it
Right.
is good to know. And
right.
Amanda, don't you, I mean, you're so worn out, you're so fatigued. I don't know about you guys, you're probably the same. But when I'm worn out, I hit bottom, and that's when I start crying.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I never wanted to cry in front of anybody.
No.
And it's just, you're just so worn that your strength, whatever it is that it would hold it in, wouldn't hold it in. I know.
Yeah.
You don't want to get to that point.
I think it's, yeah, Brad Pitt, perfect moment. I think a good segue from that, because you guys are talking about sort of community and getting to know yourself. Can you each discuss the role that networking, community, and mentorship has played, if it has played a role in your journey of balancing your career and your health management? If there's been anybody sort of in your life that you've been able to talk to or go to, or an organization like ours. Cara, you want to start?
Well, I would just say like Marissa, who's in my box like a few down. Because when I was diagnosed, I was in college and I did not know a single person who had lupus, like at all, like not at college, not at home. So a mutual friend introduced Marissa and I in our early 20s, and just knowing someone else who was my age, forget about that worked in the same business, but just like another local human that was, like I could see myself in her, and she also had lupus, was so, there are no words. It was such a relief. Like I felt so much less alone, because honestly, in college, everybody was like, what's that? I've never even heard of that. Are you gonna die? Like it was, the reactions to it were so alienating that just being able to talk to Marissa and have her, through this journey has been incredible. So both the combination of her, yes, Lupus LA, absolutely, because then once, I had met Adam and started to meet other people in the lupus community, that was a huge relief. And then just to feel like in between the doctors that are connected to Lupus LA, so like then I had met Dr. Wallace, from Dr. Wallace I had met Dr. Rinaldi, so the community really opened up for me once, I had started to find it, and it was such a huge relief. I mean, I think to do it without that is it's almost impossible. Like you need to have the support, you need to have other people who know what you're going through and have hacks for it. You know what I mean? Like there are so many hacks where it's like, I have this symptom, like what do you do for that? Like my hair's falling out, which vitamin are you taking? Like all of those things have been because of the lupus community, and I think it's invaluable.
Marissa seems like the natural next person is you.
Yeah,
Yes.
I feel the same way about Cara because it's true. Getting diagnosed in 1990, everybody was like, "What is it called? Lupus? What is it?" It took forever to find a specialist, pediatric rheumatologist for me at the time, and it was very isolating. All my friends were like, "Why do you have that rash on your face? Why do you have a bald spot on your head?" And over time, my best friends still to this day understand it fully now. But at the time, you're a kid and you're mean and and so it was very isolating. And then when I finally met Cara, I was like, oh my gosh, another young person with the same pursuits. And this is a godsend. This is so great. And it was actually our mutual friend, Danny Chameson, was like, you're the only other person besides my friend Cara. She's got lupus too. He's from Chicago. Like, what? Yeah,
Shout out
lupus.
to Danny for setting
Yeah.
us.
But yes, meeting Cara was amazing, and then we've been friends ever since. And it's exactly that. We do call each other and say, "What do you do for this? What do you do for that? Have you taken this medicine? Have you taken this drug?" I've even called Adam a few times about. I just started trying Benlysta as of last November, and just having a conversation with him sort of quelled my anxieties about going into a new infusion drug. But yes, it's about the community, finding other people. I to talk to and also share your experience with. I have several people that have called me over the years who are newly diagnosed, and even just offering advice to others who are in that stage of a new diagnosis and they feel like everything's falling apart, just to be an example of how no, your life is not over. It's just different now, and you have to sort of acknowledge and embrace the difference. And first and foremost, get a really good medical team and then listen to what they tell you to do. um, and yeah.
Amanda?
Yeah, I think honestly, the sense of community and the ability to talk about it with other people. I mean, the women on this Zoom very much included. But once I started being more open about having lupus, I ended up with people coming to me and saying, it's actually funny because I posted the thing for this on Instagram, and I had like 3 people ping me and say like, oh, like I actually have been wondering if I have lupus, and I'm like, great. Do you live in LA? Do you need a doctor? um, but if I hadn't posted that, then there would be other people out there thinking that they're all alone. I have a colleague that I sent to Dr. Wallace, who's my rheumatologist, because she was going through some autoimmune stuff. It's like I like that I've sort of become a go-to autoimmune disease advice person, because
Yeah.
look, I'm not a doctor, but I know a lot of them now. And but again, I think this idea, Cara, I think about the advice you got to to keep it secret and not tell anyone. In a way, it's society honestly trying to make sure that we don't all get together and help each other. I think the more that we raise our hand and say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with, the more likely we are to find other people who are struggling with the same thing or something similar, and to be able to be great support systems for each other. I think I'm just so glad that we all are able to be so honest about it, and that it's a feature, not a bug kind of a thing.
Right.
I love that.
Lauren?
I really didn't have anybody to mentor me, but I have, like all of you, all the women on this panel. Once I went public with it, I'm called often, and I'm always always ready to help and give advice. And one thing we didn't discuss is like how you're feeling like crap, and people say, "But you look fine," and to address that and to give them a little bit of forewarning. But yes, I mean, I think it's really important to tell people, to tell other people, and then to reach out and to help. I think that's our responsibility. And I've done it many, many, many times.
And Amanda, you and I were introduced through a mutual friend as
Yeah.
well, who knew you had lupus, who knew I had lupus. And so, yeah, it's just building the community.
Yes, yes, it is.
It really is.
And I think, Lauren, what you just said is a great topic for all of you to weigh in on. How do you manage, you're not feeling well and maybe you're sharing it or not sharing it, and you look great. Everybody tells me that, obviously that when I joined the organization, the word I heard often was invisible, right? It's an invisible illness and it's so hard for people to understand. So when you look well and maybe you're at work and not feeling well, how do you handle that?
Sometimes I laugh it off and I say, my philosophy is feel bad, look good. I mean, it's hard to explain to anybody how horrible you feel. I mean, it doesn't affect your face unless you're like this.
Right.
Right.
Amanda?
Yeah, I mean,
I look good.
like for a long time it was just like just power through. And yeah, I mean, I think it's similar to like if you're sick and you've lost a lot of weight and then everyone's like, you look amazing, and you're like, no, I'm very ill. and but it's a great reminder that you do not know what's going on with anybody else.
Anyone.
True that.
And so for me, having something where sometimes underneath the surface I feel like garbage, but I'm like, hey, I'm here, I'm cute. I think it just reminds me that you don't know what anyone else is going through, and I hope it gives me a little more grace, especially if someone's being a jerk. I just think, well, maybe there's something going on with them that it has nothing to do with me, and I'm gonna be a little less annoyed by behavior that maybe would have bothered me more in the past. But it's hard, but at the same time, look, vainly, like, cool to have a disease where you don't look.
You look good.
Yeah, whenever anybody's like, "How you feeling?" I was like shit. They're like, "Well, you look good." I was like, "Well, that's all that matters, right?"
Hollywood, guys.
That's Hollywood, right.
Yeah. Cara, you want to weigh in?
I mean, I feel like garbage right now. So like
And you look good.
And you look good.
Your hair's fab.
Thanks, ladies. I moved yesterday. Every muscle is sore. I didn't sleep. I had a root canal. My mouth is killing me. Like, I feel terrible. And this with lupus comes and goes. So these days, if anyone tells me I look great, I'm like, thanks.
Yeah.
I feel
Amazing.
like I'll take it. If they're saying it as a way to diminish like me saying I don't feel well, then those are people I don't spend a lot of time thinking about anymore. Like when I was younger, that used to really upset me. Now all the people in my life that I'm close to know that you can feel awful and still not look like you're physically sick. So these days I'll take the compliment and send them on their way.
Right. It's very confusing for people who
It is.
don't
It is.
understand
It
the
is.
invisible
It is.
illness.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it's more common now. I mean,
Yeah.
back when in the 80s, where you were too, like,
Yeah.
it was so, it's what is it? What is it? What is lupus anyway? How many times have you heard that?
Oh my God.
So often.
The thing for me,
Also, you know why? Because the diseases are tested usually on men in the VA hospital. Medicine is tested, I'm sorry, on men in the VA hospitals. And because there weren't that many women in the military, that for a long time, they just ignored any disease that would affect more women than men.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating.
what I'll say is I was diagnosed right before the show House came out.
Oh
And
my.
Thank you, House. For
it just really helped people understand.
It really did.
Yeah.
The funniest thing is, the takeaway from House, right, is like, it's never lupus. I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, it is. So it is lupus. But that was like, thanks to Hugh Laurie for teaching America about lupus.
I love
We should honor him at the next lupus.
Yeah, there you go. There's
Yes,
the
yeah, he's the
honorary.
one. No, you should honor the guy who wrote it.
Yeah,
That's it. That's who
exactly.
we should honor.
That's who we should honor. All right, look at that came out of this. Ladies, we're almost at the end of our hour. I thank all of you for sharing. I think the last question we'll sort of talk about is what advice would you offer other women that are either in this industry or wanting to get into this industry and are facing similar health challenges? I think you've covered a lot of it, but what advice would you give to young women that are looking to join this industry? Lauren?
Oh, I say don't. We're in flux. No, I would just say, be strong, keep your passion first and front and forward, and your passion will drive you. It is an industry where the easiest thing to say is no. And if you're not feeling well, no has resonance. So if you really are passionate about writing or producing or acting or being an executive, whatever it is, follow that passion and let it lead you, and take all the advice that we have said. And in other words, let yourself rest, but best of luck and move forward.
Cara?
I would say, and hopefully you wouldn't have naysayers, but a lot of people told me that I couldn't do it and I shouldn't do it. A lot of people said, like, you might not be able to have a full-time job, but you should be realistic about what you're capable of professionally. And I think that made me want to do it more, because I really have a problem with authority. So I was like, so I think if you really want it and you're passionate about it, you shouldn't just, let someone tell you don't even try because you might have some health challenges. I think there's definitely a way of working hard and being passionate and still taking care of yourself that I, maybe learned a little bit later or am still learning. So I would still advise, like, go into the business knowing that it is a business, that the expectation is you work, hard and long hours, and that some parts of it can be quite taxing, both physically and emotionally. But if this is what you want to do and you're excited and passionate about it, then I would say, like, or any job, don't let people tell you can't do it before you even have tried. You decide how much you can participate and contribute and still take care of yourself.
Great advice. Amanda?
Yeah, I think, we talk a lot in Hollywood lately, especially about representation and, bringing your authentic self and what each person is bringing to the table. And for me, lupus is one of the many things that defines me. And I think it gives me a particular point of view, both, as someone helping creatives tell stories, but also just as a human, as a colleague. And so I think if you're coming into this and you have lupus or another autoimmune disease, like, that's a superpower too. You have a point of view on things that other people who are 100% healthy might not. And I think that's really, really valuable. But yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, if this business is exhausting and crazy and sometimes infuriating, but also just the most joyful when it's all going well. And yeah, if this is what you're passionate about, then don't let lupus stop you from that. Just make sure, I think we're all saying the same thing, which is, like, make sure you're also taking care of yourself. And I do hope that people starting out today are coming into a little bit more of a comfortable environment where you can advocate for yourself and you can, sort of hold some boundaries that I know I was not capable of doing 20 years ago.
Great. Marissa, I'll give you the last word.
Well, my first mentor out of college, I started working at Stephen Bochco Productions as a PA, and eventually worked my way up to being executive producer's assistant. So I had the great honor and privilege of meeting David Milch. And I might be paraphrasing because it's been a long time, but he said, absent action, animals are sad. So you need to have a pursuit. You need to have a purpose. And if that purpose is your passion in any aspect of this business or just anything in life, I say you must follow it. You follow your heart, you follow your passion. But when you're living with an autoimmune disease, you also have to listen to your body. So both those things are of utmost importance. But again, like there are going to be some days where you just have to lie flat, and that's just what you have to do. But then the next day, maybe you get back onto that computer and write something. Or, and I do think, like Amanda said, our unique life experience, for me, it's definitely informed and infused the stories that I've written. And so you can always, it's making, what is it? Lemonade. Sometimes I get my idioms wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Whatever.
I have to thank all of you women. I mean, you guys inspire me all the time. This community inspires me every day. I want to thank all of our panelists for sharing their experiences and insights. Your experiences are not only inspiring, but also a powerful reminder of the strength that we have within our community. And I want to thank our audience for joining us. Your support helps us continue our mission at Lupus LA. We're grateful for each of you. And if you're not already a part of the community and want to learn more about our programs and services, please join us. Sign up at lupusla.org by tapping Join the Community in the menu bar, or email us at info@lupusla or call us. And we really appreciate everybody joining us, and I appreciate you ladies for participating. This was really wonderful.
And Susan, we appreciate you too. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Very much.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
So much.
Bye,
Yeah.
ladies.
Bye.
Bye.